We're going to continue with our section going through the parables here. Last week it was the sower. And this week is called the parable of the weeds. I worked on a lot of nice golf courses over the years. And a University Club of Kentucky a few years ago. Well, you got to understand it. This is one of the really top notch. So these fairways, man, they're like this, and the greens are just smooth, and everything's good. But the mark of a good golf course is the rough. How bad and nasty is the rough, the weeds? Some of them are up here, and it's intentional. We keep them that way. But it looks great, and there's no sense in worrying about it because you've got this big, beautiful fairway, and that's prepared for you. And you got this big, nice cut green that's been prepared. Work's been done for you. Yet I'll sit there, and on a hole that the fairway's 600 yards long at 200 yards wide, not one of the four people on the tee hit it. They go everywhere. Now, the reason that brought mind to me is here when I was reading this week. There was one particular time when I saw a group coming. I was on the tractor mowing rough, and I was kind of in charge of the rough, and I like to keep it high. I like it. You shouldn't be over here. This guy comes over in his cart and he goes, "Hey, man, you guys need to cut this rough. It's too long. It's too long. It's not right." I said, "Well, sir, actually, we got a tournament coming up next week, and we're going to raise it up half an inch." "Oh, no, and he went off. I said, sir, now hang on a minute." I said, and I told him, I said, "You see that nice, big, flat, short grass out there? We do that just for you. We prepared that just for you golfers. And if you put your ball in there and stay in there, it's going to be a whole lot more fun, and things are going to be a whole lot more easier. And there's nothing in these weeds that's going to get you." Because he goes over and he starts to go over toward this there's a pond in there you can't even see, and it's rough. I said, "Sir," I'm going to tell you what, if that was me, I wouldn't go in there after it. I'd just lose the ball. He goes, "Oh, you mean?" He goes, "I've seen what lives in there. I know what lives in there." So let's go to the parable of the weeds. Now it's Matthew 13, and it's in two sections. We'll do the parable itself first. It's 24 through 30. Jesus told them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, 'Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where did the weeds come from?' 'An enemy did this,' he replied. The servants asked him, 'Do you want us to go and pull them up?' 'No,' he answered, 'because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds, tie them in bundles to be burned, and gather the wheat and bring it into my barn.'" There's a couple little things in here I want to point out. If you look back to the one we did last week, the parable of the sower, Jesus, let's go straight into it. Went straight into a farmer went to sow his seed. That's how we started. Well, this time, did you notice that Jesus started with the kingdom of heaven is like? The kingdom of heaven is like. And you're going to see that the rest of these parables all start out the exact same way. The kingdom of heaven is like the weed parable. The kingdom of heaven is like the ones we're going to be talking about next week. So remember that a parable is, through the Greek, to put beside you, to join with, to have you in the story. That's why it's a parable. You're put in the story. It's related to you. Jesus tells you the story, but he puts you in it. And you also got to remember that Jesus is also speaking in parables because, to be honest, because of the spiritual dullness of the people. He's trying to use something to make them think. Something they know about. Okay? Now, something interesting about the weeds here. Now, research has shown that the weeds in that part of the country, part of the world, are deceptive little things. They're actually called darnel plants. They're weeds that grow in their wheat. And the thing about the darnel plants, it looks exactly like wheat. You can't tell it by looking at it. It can only be distinguished later once it's ready to be harvested. Up till then, you can't tell the difference between the wheat and the wheat, the darnel. Now, since this parable is not referring to unbelievers in the professing of the church. The field is the world. Thus the people of the kingdom live side by side with the people of the evil one. The enemy that he says came and put the darnel in there that night. Can't tell the difference. And I think that's what this message is trying to tell me, or that's what I get out of it, and I think you can see this. That since the darnel looks just like wheat, the Christian believers look just like non-believers or even evil people, then how do you tell the difference? Or do you? Why do you need to tell the difference? When it comes time for harvest, the harvester's going to separate them, burn the weeds, keep the wheat. So while they're together, why disrupt? Why take a chance on being too aggressive with the weeds to hurt the wheat? Jesus lived and went out purposely among the weeds. Jesus was always in the weeds. Those were the people he was there. He told us many times, we've talked about it just about every week. I did not come here. Didn't come here for peace. He came here as the fly in the ointment. He came here because it was time. It was needed. The world needs to come together. The wheat and the weeds are together. Let's nurture them. Let's love them. And the harvester, he'll separate them. At one of my summer church ministry schools, there was a guy there from Ohio ministering. And boy, if you think I'm not typical, this guy was a whole lot freakier than me. And he said, look, those are my people. But I love them. I don't care. He goes, it's my job to catch the fish. It's Jesus' job to clean them. No, I like that. I kind of like that idea. I catch it. We grow it. The harvester is going to sort it all out at the end. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, we have to get out there and tend it. We got to grow our wheat. We got to be fruitful, right? We got to go out and do our job, talk to people, show the love of Jesus, and do the ministry we're all told to do. I mean, he sent all of us out. So where do we go? What do we do? Do we go to the hardware store and get a bunch of weed killer? In other words, do we go out and just look down at everybody that doesn't believe, don't go to church, don't do all this? Or do we accept and love them and live with and just try to encourage? Which one are you going to do? You going to leave the weed right there? It'll be all right. You can't tell the difference by looking. So why take the chance? Just be yourself. Be what Jesus made you to be. Whether it's weeds or another wheat plant there with you, it doesn't matter. You are to act the same way. You are to do what Jesus taught, regardless. We've all heard the old saying, oh, don't judge, don't judge. Well, yeah, don't judge, but it's hard not to have an opinion. You got to just let it go. So, as I said last week, Jesus, in these parables, does the absolute textbook ministry guideline. You know, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That's boom, boom, boom. That's number one in homiletics. Well, let's move on to the second section, see how Jesus does this again. And that's going to be verses 36 through 43. Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. You know, when we've read the parable a while ago, I'm sure you all got the gist of it, right? I mean, it's pretty, but, you know, there are a few things you need to talk about, which we did. The disciples are going here. They're waiting till he gets off in quiet, goes up to him and says, that was really good, man. Could you tell me what you were talking about? Well, you got to explain that to us. So don't feel bad if you don't understand things. The disciples didn't either. And he answered, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man, Jesus. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. Bet you's going to say the harvester was Jesus, didn't you? The harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out his kingdom, everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. He ended another parable with that one. He who has ears, let him hear. In other words, don't you get it now? Do you understand now? I'm talking about my Father. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about them. I'm talking about Satan. Because we're all right in that field together. And you cannot tell us apart. Scary, isn't it? But where does that leave us? I don't think it leaves us with anything to worry about at all. We know who we are. You know who you are. And yeah, everybody gets in the weeds. Everybody hits their ball in the weeds. I don't care who you are, how good you get, what you do. You're a human being. You're going to end up in the weeds. But you know what lives in there, right? You know what lives in there. Go in and get your ball and get out. When we're in a crowd, might see something ugly going on. Be the peacemaker. Let your gentle side show. If someone just gets really out of line rude because they're having a bad day, or they've had too much to drink, or the sun's beating down on their head all day, or whatever, let your gentle side show, because you can't tell the difference between the wheat and the weeds. And sometimes everybody ends up in the weeds. So, kindness. He who has ears, let him hear. I've always thought, taken that as not just, the obvious, okay, go back and read it again and make sure. He who has ears to hear. I think that's a personal statement. I think he's talking to each individual of us. Open your mind up, man. Open your head up to it. I mean, I know too many people that just, I know there's something spiritual and all these kind of things. And, I got married in the church, but I never go. So what do? I mean, who am I? What is it to me? What's going to happen to them the day of the harvest? I don't want to see that happen to anybody. So that's why when you're out with people, just show Jesus' love. I can't say that too much. There's just not enough of that in everyday life. At your work, show somebody some love. You don't know whether they're wheat or wheat, but you treat them the same. Continue the parables next week. Praise be to God.